state senator in western Maryland, representing Frederick and Washington counties. I like to say, from my family background, my father was a feisty Irishman from New York. He was very political, raised us to be very involved in the process. He had run for office in Maryland several times. My mother is an immigrant from Cuba. When she was 21 years old, an evil tyrant named Fidel Castro took her country over, threw her in jail just because she wasn't a communist. When she got out, she fled to this country, which greeted her with open arms. And I moved here in February, and West Virginia has been wonderful, greeting me with open arms. I like to say my mom's a refugee from Cuba, and I'm now a refugee from Maryland to nice conservative West Virginia. And it's been great. And, you know, one of my favorite presidents growing up was Ronald Reagan. He was referenced before. Reagan was my hero growing up. He did a great job as president. We were taught to respect that position. And I've done a lot of research on Reagan over the years. The speech he gave in 1964 was a famous speech called Time for Choosing, where he was promoting Barry Goldwater for president. In that speech, he told a story about Cuba, which related to me because of my mother's experience. In that story, he says, not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, we don't know how lucky we are to be Americans. And the Cuban stopped and said, how lucky you are. I had someplace to escape to. And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here in this country, there's no place to escape to. This is the last land on earth. And when my mother left, this is where she escaped to. And it greeted her with open arms. And she raised me to fight for our country. When I was 27, I ran for the state senate. My state senate district was, like I said, Frederick and Washington counties, the southern parts. And I know I have similar strengths and weaknesses to Senator Harris. We're both senators, and neither of us have money to self-fund our race. We have to raise it all ourselves. And my senate district, although another state, was actually geographically closer to the eastern Panhandle than Charleston is. And a lot of the issues we worked on were quad-state regional issues. I-81, getting the roads fixed. The growth. Western Maryland, much like the eastern Panhandle, is growing very fast. We actually moved here. My wife is by training a neurosurgeon. Right now, she stays home and homeschools our two children. So we're very much, I'm very proud of my wife for making that decision to homeschool our children. So I'm going to fill out my bio there a little bit. We're moving to Charlestown soon. We live here in Falling Waters now. And I have a proven conservative voting record that I will stand up to show against anyone. I was always pro-business vote. In my 12 years as a state senator, I never once voted for a tax hike. Let me tell you, that's hard to do. There are a lot of taxes that people want to raise all the time, and the answer to government is not more taxes, it's to cut spending. As I travel this state in West Virginia, one of the reasons I decided to run, from what I heard from the people of West Virginia was, they are sick and tired of spending, out of control spending at the federal government. The debt goes up, the deficit goes up every year. They don't want someone to go along to get along, but either party for that matter. They want someone who's going to throw down and fight against the out-of-control spending. We are mortgaging our children's future. And it used to be said, I remember when I was in high school, it was said, oh, the debt's owed to Americans, so that's okay. Well, it was never okay. And the debt's now being bought by other countries, like China. It is not okay to have that debt. We do not have the right to mortgage our children's future with this out-of-control spending. And they want someone who's going to fight that. I've been a fighter all my life. And that's why I mentioned my family background. I'm proud of my pro-business voting record, voted against government regulations. The pro-Second Amendment, I led the fight on the Senate floor for right to carry, to protect our right to keep and bear arms. I know guns and abortion are not necessarily issues of the business community, but I led the fight for pro-life as well. Maryland, they expanded taxpayer funding of abortion. I offered the amendment to stop that. And when I look at what's going on with the federal government once again, and I see this Obamacare, and what the Democrats essentially are imposing on us. With this Obamacare, it's bad for business. We can't afford it. It's far too expensive to create new entitlements like that. It's not the right policy. We need to repeal that entirely and replace it with something called the free market, the free enterprise system. It works. Get the government, like Ronald Reagan said, government's not the answer to the problems. It is the problems. And that Obamacare is the problem. More government is the problem. We need less government. We need more freedom, more competition in healthcare, not more government. We need to repeal that entirely. We force people, without Obamacare, we force people like Joe Holland, who is now in Charleston, to sue the federal government because he doesn't want to have to pay for abortion as part of healthcare, which Obamacare is making him do. I happen to be Roman Catholic, whether you're Catholic or not, my faith is under attack. If you don't believe in paying for abortion as part of healthcare, it's under attack. So it's bad for business, it's bad for families, it's terrible policy. That's the direction this country's going. And we don't need someone down here who's just going to try and make it work better. We need to repeal that entirely and look at other wasteful government spending programs. So if you give me a chance to do this job, I promise I'll fight for you every day. I'll always be available. It's a huge district. There are 17 counties from the Eastern Panhandle. I am proud to live in the Eastern Panhandle. It is the fastest growing part of the district, but the legislature will have to represent everything from the Eastern Panhandle all the way down to Charleston and everything in between. It's a big district, and it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be able to live in this country and fight for our freedoms. And I ask you to vote on May 13th. God bless.